Following my last video concerning me carelessly blowing up my monitor audio loudspeakers, I've decided to do a temporary bodge. Now, before you start writing notes to me saying that what I'm doing is a pretty crappy idea, well, I agree, it is a crappy idea. But if you've ever heard speakers with nothing above about 4 kilohertz, it's painful. It's like listening to AM radio. So I can't put a tweeter inside the cabinet because there's no space and there's no way to mount it. So what I'm going to use, I've got a couple of these piezoelectric tweeters, which they're not hi-fi under any stretch of the imagination, but I do have the ability to just sit these on the top of the cabinet like that, and they will sort of fill in the gap. Now, you don't strictly need a crossover for this, and I've thought about connecting them literally where the existing speakers go, existing tweeters go, but it means there's no real way of getting the cable out of the cabinet without, well, just take it from me, there's no real way of doing it. So this could be the answer. I'm just going to sit these on the top of the speaker and connect the output straight across the existing speaker. Now, I would expect these to be somewhat more sensitive than the whole speaker, so I may need to put a resistor. I shouldn't need to put a capacitor in series, because for those that don't know how these work, they don't strictly need a capacitor for the crossover, because the impedance of them rises dramatically at low frequencies. So you can actually run them directly from your amplifier. But that's something I'm going to mess about with in a minute. So for the moment, I'm going to put the cables on here. Now these are coded plus and minus, so we will assume that that is correct. I've tinned the speaker cable, and one side of the cable has a line running down it, so we'll call that positive. Let's see if I can do this. Around the camera. These are just going to be a touch fit because I don't really want to make a permanent installation. So there's my positive. That will do. Right, I'll do the other one off camera and then we'll go into the lounge and connect it up. Well, there are my speaker connections. The switch, by the way, is purely so I can switch over to another source and still use the same speaker cables. I'm just describing it because I can't actually get there and show you at the same time very easily. So I'm simply going to connect those cables to here, which are literally, that's in parallel with that. So I'm just going to unscrew that and pop the wire in there. Right, we've got some white noise now. That's without the tweeter, and this is with it. Now, I think we need a little bit of taming on that because it's a little bit shrill, and I think that's due to it crossing over too early. So I'm going to look for something like about a 2 microfarad capacitor and put that in series and see if it makes it sound better. Well, I've tamed it down somewhat now, and I'll show you what I've done. Far from perfect, but it's better than it was. Well, I'm almost embarrassed to show you the crossover network I've designed. This is basically the crossover, and all it's meant to do is to take off some of the lower frequencies from the tweeter. And what it is two 1 microfarad electrolytic capacitors. Now, I know electrolytics are bad news for crossovers, and the fact that it needs to be a non-polarized. So I've made this, and by putting them in series I get 0.5 microfarad, and by putting the negatives together and connecting the signal to the positive of one and the positive of the other, I've effectively made a 0.5 microfarad non-polarized capacitor. And that seems to give me about the best sound that you can expect from basically a cheap and nasty tweeter. But I have to say it's acceptable. If it's a case of listening to this without a tweeter or this, I'll choose the width. And if I have to make any small adjustments, I'm going to do another thing that I don't normally do. I shall use the graphic equalizer on the computer to fine-tune it so it sounds okay. Here is my bodge all done up. I've tied it all together with a tie wrap so that the wire won't pull the connection.
Favourite songs are for a special edition of the Sound Hall of Fame Countdown. It's our 10th birthday and we want you to help us build a countdown. Cast your votes now at thesound.co.nz. Then listen all Labour weekend as we count down 500 of the greatest songs ever made as chosen by you. The Sound Hall of Fame Countdown, the perfect soundtrack for Labour weekend. And thank you for sharing your passion for this great music with us for the last 10 years. The Sound.
Well, that's the end of this little project, but I do have some good news. The distributors of Monitor Audio in New Zealand have felt sorry for me, thought poor pensioner, no money. So they very kindly agreed to waive the postage charge, which has saved me just over $100. So that's $100 more to squander on a new project.